Good morning, everybody, and can I ask everybody please take your seats at our table. We're now formally live in our live stream. Following on from yesterday's presentations and deliberations related to prevention and education, we're going to continue that theme this morning and start immediately on the whole area of resilience and well-being. I'm going to call to the podium immediately to get us going Professor Pat Dolan, who's the UNESCO Chair in Children, Youth and Civic Engagement in the University of Galway, and he's also a wide experience working within the services and not just as an academic. Pat, you're very welcome.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. Lovely to be here, and thanks very much for the invitation to speak to you this morning. Basically, I'm going to make an argument across three things in relation to understanding resilience. So resilience is the capacity to bounce back, it's the capacity to do better than expected, it's the capacity to recover. But two conditions need to be there in order to judge resilience. One is extreme trauma or extreme difficulty, and the other one is that you just don't cope, you actually do better in life. So it's a very hopeful message. But I'm going to start with three underpinning positions to get us to discuss these things. The first one is, if you look at resilience in the context of programs or in the context of how people live their lives, at a very basic level, if you think about drug misuse, there's a moral case that prevention, early intervention, that accelerates the capacity of people to do well and deal with issues in their lives needs to be taken more seriously. There's a moral case that we have to not be thinking about prevention, early intervention, as something that comes at the end of a meal, but as the main course. The scientific case behind resilience and well-being is overwhelming, and I've been researching this with colleagues both nationally at the University of Galway and internationally within UNESCO for decades. And the evidence is absolutely overwhelming. Where you support young people and families in their communities, sometimes in very, very basic ways, it has amazing results. But you need to put the capacity in. And the evidence for that ranges from the excellent work that organisations like Feroiga have done around things like Big Brothers Big Sisters programme, where it was randomised controlled trial evidence research, which I was involved in, right through to youth leadership, right through to many, many community interventions. So the case from a scientific, I'm a social scientist, from a scientific point of view is absolutely overwhelming. So I'm saying there's a moral case, this is something we should be doing as a society, and I really, really feel that. I can't say that strongly enough. You shouldn't have to make the case for it. Secondly, resilience works, and we're going to look at a little bit more at that very quickly. But the last thing I'd say that even if you didn't take those two cases, which I think you should take as a society, the social return on investment case around interventions that are prevention, early intervention services that include the capacity to enable resilience in young people, families and communities is overwhelming. James Heckman, for example, the Nobel Prize winner in Economist, he showed that in early childhood education, for every euro you spent, you get something like in the region of €12 of a return. That's less people in psychiatric services when they grow up. It's less damage. Even if you take very basic societal returns, the social return on investment in prevention and early intervention is outstanding and something that we really have to take seriously. So this may seem a really weird thing to say in one way, but it's not. So resilience is the capacity in life where your protective factors in your life outweigh your risk factors. Your protective factors are family, friends, community, staying in school, being involved in a hobby, believe it or not. Robbie Gilligan's work on the connection between resilience and engagement in a hobby as a method to actually, for want of a better term, to deflect from drug use is a great example that is there. So everything from mentoring, community programs, and this idea of new models of civic engagement. So when you have resilience, you have five areas of resilience that are really important. Relationships, giving somebody responsibility, ritual, routine, and this idea of reciprocity, that you give something back. Civic engagement, where young people and families, even in situations where they're in extreme adversity, where they are kept engaged, where they are giving something back, where they are seen and respected as part of civic society, is massively, massively beneficial, and there's overwhelming evidence. There are three underpinning ways of thinking about resilience. So resilience is this idea that your protective factors outweigh your risk factors. That means that not alone are you preventing something, but if something is going wrong, you can have early intervention. So the obvious thing is to think, well, we need to retain young people in schools. We need to have, normative life experiences for young people and parents. And obviously issues like poverty, inequality are there. I'm not saying that. Resilience is not just about individuals pulling themselves up by their straps, that kind of nonsensical notion of resilience. Resilience is ecological. It goes across society. And that gets back to my earlier point that we need to think about the wider moral case around resilience. But it's underpinned by two very quick things. One is family support. And because of support of families across nuclear extended family, right into community relationships, they're the reasons that many of us get by in life. Because we get practical support, which is social support, we get emotional support, and we get advice support from people in our families. That's the three forms of social support. And they're the key ingredients in the resilience Irish stew. And I'm a bad cook, but the three ingredients in a good Irish stew are practical support like tangible support, emotional support, and advice support. Where you have in place good family support and where you have good social support, you get the capacity for resilience to thrive. And resilience is all about thriving in the face of adversity, and these all contribute to your well-being. I would make an argument of something that I've been looking at lately with colleagues nationally and internationally, is that empathy education, the capacity for effective and cognitive empathy, which is active empathy, is a key ingredient. It's a key ingredient because it enables us, it's like what oils resiliency in our lives and oils our capacity to manage and get ahead. Empathy is not pity, it's compassion. And I would argue in the context of early intervention where people are involved in drug use, compassion is a key ingredient. And I don't mean in a soft way, I mean in a very, very real way. And there's overwhelming evidence. We've just developed a schools program called Activating Social Empathy, which is now going on the SPHE program. But that needs capacity and it needs growth. And this gets back to my earlier point. You might find it ironic that I'm suggesting that we think about COVID today. We're all trying to forget about COVID. But actually, during COVID, it's very interesting. I was involved in a global study with 106 countries involving youth from all over the world. And they were facing COVID in as difficult circumstances. We were in some places and worse. But we trained young people to be researchers, to research, even from Zoom, what COVID meant to them in their lives and their families and communities. And it's really interesting. The one thing that they all came up with internationally was the notion of being resilient, the notion of thriving and overcoming the odds. And that meant different things in the context of COVID. But it's a great example of how, in a very, very difficult situation, resilience was the one thing that shone for people. So importantly, we know a lot about what works, and a lot of and you've heard a lot, I'm sure, in the last few days and in recent meetings on the Assembly. We know a lot about what works, both nationally and internationally. What we do know is the importance of a caring adult in our life. We know the importance of stable relationships. We know the importance of being involved in your community, staying at school. These things, which may seem very banal, they're actually incredibly important in prevention.
Just 2 minutes, Pat.
Okay, and they're also the key ingredients in enabling your resilience. But even if you look apart from that, one of the things we know about why works, why does it work as opposed to what works, the reason it works is because of relationships. And relationships are what we all thrive on. And for young people or adults who see themselves as on the margin or on the edge, the very reason they can get back on the mainstream is because of the relationships. And you will hear lots of story of recovery. And resilience is not just about recovery. Resilience is about recovery and coming back as better. It's not just about coping. The positive news is that we know how this can be done. The challenge is, where do we go from here? So the argument is, in any budget you look from a social policy point of view, at least 20% of what you are spending needs to go on prevention and early intervention. Why are we waiting? Why are we waiting? Why are we waiting until we're in crisis? Why are we not intervening early? So I would make the case that in medicine we learned the importance of early intervention. in our social lives and in our social interaction with young people and adults and communities who are experiencing drug misuse, the key factor for me is intervene early and often. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat.